something freaking
Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Erock Rodz, and today we're going to take a close look at the Graffiti X e-bike. We're going to go over some of the things that I like and some of the things that I don't like in my short time of ownership, and do a quick first impressions on the bike itself. We're going to get into the performance of the bike on a separate video. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do a lot of riding because my son is homesick and my wife is working, so I can't leave him alone. So I'm going to be just going over my initial thoughts on the bike, about the components, and then we'll go from there and we will do the performance on a separate video. Let's get into this. It's probably no surprise to you, but my first impressions are I really like this bike. The power, the performance, the style, those check all of my boxes and what I want in an e-bike, and this definitely is meeting the needs. I really like it so far. I've only had it for about 3 or 4 days now, and I haven't really been able to test ride it that much yet. I've probably only got maybe a couple miles on the bike. First impressions, I really like it. No surprise there, but there are definitely some things that I don't like, and we're gonna go over those things. We're gonna go over the things that I like, that I don't like, and we will take it from there. Just so you guys are aware, I did purchase this bike with my own money, but I was one of the early adopters and I did the pre-sale. I ordered this bike way back in January of this year, so it took a little while to get to me, 10 months, almost 11 months basically. But I did purchase this bike at the pre-sale cost, which was $3,000. At that price, this bike is definitely a steal in my opinion. For the performance and for the components, whole bike in general, it's definitely a steal at $3K. The bike retailed for $4,000. That's its initial retail price. And unfortunately, more recently, because of the tariffs, the price actually went up. I believe it's actually selling for about like $4,600. And at that price, it's getting really close into some of the other bikes with higher performance space, just like the Javelin, just for example, Spark Cycles Javelin is around the same costs. And that's running a 72 volt versus a 60 volt on the Graffiti X. So, there's definitely other things to consider when you're looking at the price tag. But like I said, for me personally, at $3K, this is a no-brainer steal. And for you moving forward, it's really going to be up to you what you like in terms of the components, in terms of the bike's performance, style, all that. But at $4,600 currently, there's definitely some other options to consider out there. All right, so just to go through some of my initial thoughts on the bike. I'm not going to go through all the specs just because I've done that on a previous video, but I'll throw them up on the screen if you really wanted to see. My first impressions of riding, some of the things that I do like is I love the power of the bike. Power of the bike on off-road mode, pedal assist 9, just to be specific. Just because the bike does have pedal assists, power assists I should say, from 1 through 9. And some of the power levels are a little cumbersome and it's a little confusing on how they work with off-road mode and the regular riding mode, e-bike mode. I might not have enough time on the bike yet to see the differences between everything, but the pedal assist speeds control the pedal assist and the throttle itself. And the low levels, let's just say the throttle feels very sluggish. I know a lot of you do like to pedal. You're gonna have to get used to playing with some of the power settings, some of the pedal assist levels, to find that perfect pedal stroke that feels comfortable, that has resistance, while it's still giving you a good speed. The e-bike mode, it caps out at 20 miles per hour, which is fine for bike paths, trails, things like that. But for the most part, having fun on this bike in the unlimited off-road mode, which is about 45 miles per hour plus. In my short testings, I did hit that, but I feel like I could have pushed a little bit more. You're gonna be enjoying it most on pedal assist 9 in the off-road mode. One thing that I don't like about this is that I don't believe that the pedal assist level saves when you turn off the bike. So every time you turn on the bike, you're gonna have to tap, 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 tap up to get to pedal assist 9, and then you could take off. But if you leave it on the lower pedal assist, you're gonna have very slow torque. Like I was mentioning before, this big direct drive 3 kilowatt motor is what provides that power that peaks at 7,200 watts. and I really enjoy the power of this bike. One thing to know is that the bike is very heavy. Assembling the bike by myself was a pain with how heavy it is, but since the bike is heavy, it feels very planted on the ground when you're going at speeds, and it feels very stable, super stable. You're gonna want that weight. And to go along with that, these tires are basically motorcycle tires. They're not e-bike tires, so they are beefy. I believe they're CST tires. I really like the stability. I really like the beefy tires that feel really sticky to the ground, at least on the pavement so far. So the other thing that stands out to me is the Magura MT5 brakes, because these things bite. These brakes feel fantastic. They bite really well, and so the braking power is definitely there. But to go along with that, the regen is very powerful as well. If you pull the brake lever just a little bit, just like that, the regen will kick in. It's pretty powerful in my opinion. If you time it well enough, you could probably use the regen and not have to use your brakes at all. So that's giving you stopping power, and then that also means longer life for your brake pads. Regen and the Magura brakes are definitely something that I really like on this bike. Another thing that I like, and this is very personal to me, and I think a lot of other riders may not like this as much, but I do think the seat is pretty comfortable, but more specifically, the seat height. I'm only a 5'4" rider, and I think the seat height is great. I can't flat foot, but I feel super comfortable when I'm sitting on the bike. I feel like the seat may have changed a little bit since the prototype that I rode, but it's still pretty good. I don't have any complaints about it. It does make this interesting sound when you sit on it. You can't really hear it, but it's basically, when you sit on it, it releases air, so it's like compressing. So far, I like the seat. I haven't ridden long rides yet, so maybe things could change, but so far, first impressions, I'm enjoying the seat. The pedal strokes are comfortable with my shorter legs, but I think some of the taller riders, you may not feel as comfortable, or you may end up having to scoot all the way back just to have a longer pedal stroke if you're pedaling. That's something that I like, but not everyone's gonna like that. Just to go over a couple things that changed from the prototype that I tested out back in May versus now, which I like, is that they were able to keep this throttle cancel button. On the prototype, I believe this was used as the on-road and off-road toggle, but now that was moved over here. So this is your on-road, off-road button right here. So I'm glad they were able to keep the throttle cancel, because it is easy to whiskey throttle if you're not paying attention, if you have the bike on. So it's always good to have that. Another thing to mention is that the brake light does function. On the prototype that I did test ride, the brake light wasn't functioning for whatever reason. So right now, I turned on the bike with the key ignition, but the brake lights won't turn on until you actually turn on the display. So let's power this on. Both rear and front brakes will toggle the brake light. And then, of course, the turn signals that I overlooked seem to work just fine. Now we're gonna go over some of the things that I dislike about the Graffiti X. So one thing, and it was probably the first thing that stood out to me, is that I believe the kickstand sits a little bit too straight. Right now, it doesn't seem that bad because my driveway is slightly on a slope, so it's not that bad. But if you're on flat road, the bike stands almost straight up. I feel like it could easily fall over to the right side if you're not careful, and I don't believe there's a way that I could pull this out any further. So maybe I'll see if I could demonstrate that later. But the kickstand is a little straight for my likings. I'd rather be slanted just a little bit more, and it's hard to tell on my slanted driveway at the moment. The other thing that I dislike on my first impressions is that this rear fender, and I guess this like covering over the brake light, feels very flimsy. Like I feel like the slightest, I don't know, slightest crash or whatever, that this thing is gonna come right off. Like you can already see right there, it's like not sitting flush. I worry about the durability of this rear fender. In my first impressions, the last thing that I don't like is the suspension does feel a little stiff in my opinion, but I haven't played with any of the settings so far. On the front, on the rear, I haven't touched that at all. Maybe it just needs a little bit fine tuning to get it a little bit softer. Just so you're aware, Lyric Cycles does have a bunch of videos on their YouTube page that will help out with pretty much any of the questions you might have about this bike. They have videos on the display. They obviously have a full assembly video. They have a video on adjusting the suspension and some tips on the suspension. They have a lot of information out there, which I appreciate. But besides that, at least as of now, I don't have any other complaints. Nothing that's at least standing out. The bike came fully functional, no issues, and I'm sorry to any of those who had some shipping problems or issues with any damages or issues with the bike not working for whatever reason. The only thing that I noticed was probably a little bit of scuffing on my front suspension and the fork. But besides that, everything else has been great. One other thing that I wanted to mention that I do like, I really like the look and feel of this belt drive. Like the tensioner feels real nice. We'll see over time how that holds up. It's supposedly less maintenance, so that's always a plus. And we're just gonna do a quick walk around just to show the attention to detail of this bike. It's something that I really appreciate about this bike. So you'll see right here, they put the specs of the bike: 60 volt, 40 amp hour, 6061 aluminum frame, 200 phase amps. And then I like this over here. So they mentioned that it's a power assisted bicycle with some of the specs over here. And it says the max speed assist is 32 kilometers per hour. So you could always show this to the law enforcement if you ever have any issues. Just toggle it into e-bike mode before that. Make sure you do that. Just the attention to detail on the bike is something that I really like. Some of the stickers on the battery, it looks like they weren't stuck on properly, but that's not a major issue for me. On the frame, everything looks good. See, this is a little sideways, a little crooked, but it's fine. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that the fastener on the bottom of the battery, they say to only hand tighten it because you don't want to over tighten it because it's basically going into your battery. But after my ride, this was a little loose. So make sure it's not too loose because this could technically, I mean, it takes a lot of screws to come out, but it could basically come out after a lot of riding and vibrations. So make sure it's tightened pretty well because mine was loose after a ride. So far, mostly all positive things about this bike. So the last thing that I wanted to go over is basically the accessories that I added to the bike. We'll start in the front. I always need a storage solution. This is a Kemimoto handlebar bag. And I always need to throw in, some tools if I need to carry any, like my gloves, some water, things like that. So this is a nice size. It seems to fit pretty well. And I didn't mention the cable management, but the cable management is pretty good. They have these coverings, but I like to put a bag on top just to hide all the cables. Cable management is pretty good, but this just covers up everything. Next, obviously this is a phone mount that I've been using on several of my bikes. Solid. I've had no issues with that. Always need a phone mount. Added this lock here, and it's a foldy lock. It's not the most secure lock, but it's something that's always going to be on the bike, so I don't have to worry about if I'm out somewhere and I need to just do a quick lock up to run inside. I'll always have this foldy lock. If I know I'm going to go somewhere and need to lock up for a while, then I would bring a more heavy-duty chain. But for now, this is going to stay on the bike just so I have that security. Next, we're going to go over this right here. So I'm not sure if I'm going to keep these yet because though it is pretty cool, it really has very limited visibility. There I am. It has a cool aesthetic, aerodynamic when not in use, but when you need to use them, you pop them open. But when I have been testing these out, the visibility is not great. You really have to lean exactly if you want to see if there are really cars behind you. They look very clean, but not sure if I'm going to keep these long term. I had one on the other side too, but the inside was stripped, so I couldn't get it in, so that's unfortunate. And then the last thing that I had to install is this right here. Well, this is part of it. Basically my security system. And it's somewhere on this bike in an undisclosed location, but I'm sure you guys could guess where it would be if you own the bike. But with a bike like this, you're definitely gonna want some security. It's nice that you have the key ignition to start it, but besides just having the lock, it's always nice to have a security alarm. So I'll link all of these accessories in the video description if you want to take a look at those, and they are affiliate links that will definitely support the channel. So this video is getting pretty long, but we'll see if we can do the performance videos soon. I'm actually going to be on vacation the next week in New Orleans, so I'll be away for the bike for a week, so I won't be able to get anything done in terms of content on the bike for a little while. But if you guys have any questions about the bike, let me know your thoughts. What do you think so far? Things that you like, things that you dislike, you think it's worth it? But in my opinion, it is 100% worth it for the price that I got it. I really like this bike. It's a bike that checks all my needs, at least so far in my testing. I really enjoy it. Great job on the bike, Lyric Cycles. All right, guys, so thanks for checking out this video. As always, if you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. Hit the like button, it really helps out the channel. And there will be definitely a bunch more videos on the Graffiti X coming out in the future, so stay tuned. All right, Erock Rodz out.